So I'm pretty sure you'll find it interesting to know how the biggest and best advertisers, that I used to work with at Google, like even IKEA, like massive kind of retailers like this, the way that they use Google Ads is pretty advanced, and this is something we can all work towards. So think about it this way. ROAS targets rarely suit every product in your catalog, right? If we're thinking about a break-even return on ad spend, it really comes down to the margins. And margins will be different per product, as you know. So in this example that I've drawn up, we've got something like hoodies down the bottom where we have a 62% margin. A margin of 62% means that we only need a return on ad spend of 1.6 in order to actually make money, basically. Or above that point is where we're going to make money. Now, if you're not sure yet how to calculate your break-even return on ad spend, it's super simple. I encourage you to just Google it. But it comes down to knowing the margins, which is going to be different, as I said, for every one of your products. So you can see here, what we have is a situation where if we were to launch one normal campaign across our entire catalog, we have to allocate a return on ad spend target. So we might choose 500 as sort of an arbitrary target and hope that the system optimizes for that. Now, you can already see why this might be a problem. For some of these products, we're making money at 500, but for others, like accessories, for example, we're actually losing money, even if we achieve the goal of 500. So Google doesn't know what our margins are, and that's why we have to get sort of strategic and business-minded about how we approach this. So as I've written, without any consideration for the profitability of different products, Google is just trying to aggregate campaign performance to achieve that one ROAS target that you set across the whole catalog. So it's actually ultimately an inefficient outcome, and I think you can see why. So for example, if you take two products, right, you've got A and B, just to reiterate this situation. Product A has a margin of 10% and B 60%. Both are in the same campaign with the one target of 500%. Now, they need different return on ad spends basically in order to generate a profit, each of them individually. So if we're going to have them in the same campaign, there are problems here. So what we should be thinking about is how can we set ROAS goals for each of them separately, which means we could get more sales volume for each at a more profitable rate, basically. And what this ends up looking like is something like this. We need to think about our product type and our product categories, rank them according to margins. And then we can begin to think about the best way to actually segment them, which might not just be having everything piled into one campaign. This is literally the tactic that IKEA implemented when I was working with them on their smart shopping campaigns a couple of years ago. And I thought it was very interesting, something I wanted to share with you. It came out of conversations I had with the smart shopping at the time was the Google product, the smart shopping expert on the floor that we had at Google, who really advised this strategy for the big advertisers that were switched on, sophisticated, and could handle this. So what you end up with is a grouping like this. You have one campaign with a ROAS target that means that all of those guys will be profitable if they hit that target. Another for the next kind of little category that you can group together. There's always going to be a trade-off between, ideally we would have 15 campaigns here, each of them having their own ROAS target, but of course it needs to be manageable as well. So it's about grouping them effectively. So we might take campaign 3 down the bottom with a ROAS target of 2,600%, which basically means a ROAS of 26, right? We need $26 for every dollar that's going in. And what we have are 3 different campaigns, each with a different ROAS target. Of course, you've just tripled your workload, but this is what the biggest and best advertisers are doing. And I hope that you see why, and I hope that you see that this is something we can work towards. It's particularly only useful if you've got maximized conversion value as a bid strategy, where we have to set return on ad spend targets. Less useful for standard shopping and other bid strategies, but this is what the biggest and best are doing.